talk about it. Robert, I have to start with where this started, which was a trip to Iceland, which I think, you've talked a lot about on the press tour already, and I think it's so great that this came from, travel that sort of inspired you to go on this journey. But the other thing I know from talking to you over these past 3 films is the fact that you love to take what I would say like Bible imagery, something that you saw where you're like, this is a guiding force. So what did you see on that trip to Iceland that made it into the film from that first time you started thinking about it?
Well, yeah, I was never interested in Vikings. I can't believe I made such a macho movie because the macho stuff just really put me off. And then as a kid, and then as an adult, the right-wing Nazi misappropriation of Viking culture kind of totally turned me off. But then Iceland, yeah, the landscapes, they were like so awe-inspiring and ancient and brutal, and they made me want to pick up some of the Icelandic sagas and learn about this culture. But the landscapes were so elemental, and what kind of stayed from that first trip was I was thinking when we were driving around about maybe I could make a Viking movie, and I think it should end with a naked sword fight on a volcano.
Just love that so much. I mean, listen, I love the incredible, I think, ideas that spring forth from your imagination that we get to witness, whether it is a sort of Shire, the crucible tale with imagery of religion, or we're talking about seductive mermaids in a remote lighthouse. But I do have to say, when you're going to do a sex scene with that kind of landscapes, I'm not going to say it was a poor choice, but where was that shot? I just have to talk about that shot because it was one of the ones that I'm like, yeah, there's a lot going on down here with Anya and Alexander, but it's gorgeous. And I just want to talk about that and some of the other places you chose as far as those locations.
Well, so we were a week before we were going to go to camera, and then we went into lockdown, and that hiatus gave us a lot more time to plan and actors to grow their beards longer and sets to gestate and grow into the landscapes. But one of the problems with COVID was that we couldn't shoot very much in Iceland. We had to shoot all of principal photography in Northern Ireland, and then I was like, well, we're running out of places that look like Iceland. So then we were also allowed to shoot in regular Ireland, and that location was shot in a place called Glenif Horseshoe, and we built our own Icelandic hot tub into the landscape, but then the very following scene was shot in Iceland, actually in Iceland, nearly a year later. But I was very glad that it was gloomy when we were shooting that scene at Glenif Horseshoe, because if they were like making out in the hot tub with the horses making out in the background and the waterfall, and it had been like it would have just been like really cheesy.
It would have been too much of a romance novel come to life, but just as a romance novel reader, I didn't mind that. So I'll just say, on top of all the blood and the death and all the gore that you put us through, it's a nice little juxtaposition, I will say. The person that was wielding so much of that mayhem, as we saw from just the original, almost opening shot, was Alexander, what you sort of put him through on this. Talk about him signing on to this, because I know he, more than anything, really pushed you for not just authenticity, but the idea of this is what Viking culture needed. It needed a grand epic that could really show the culture.
Well, so I went to Iceland, naked sword fight on a volcano, and I didn't give a Viking movie a whole lot of thought for 2 years until I had lunch with Alexander Skarsgård, who said that he'd loved Vikings since he was a kid, and he told me he'd been trying for 10 years to make a Viking movie, and he didn't have a script that he really liked. And I said, I've got a Viking story. I just had a naked sword fight, but then we kind of shook hands and said, let's try to make it work. So, we talked about the sagas. He talked about liking The Witch, and my approach to, doing things historically accurate. So I don't know if that sentence made sense, but in any case, yeah. So yeah. Ask me another question because I'm flailing.
No, you're not. Here, I give you a chance to talk about how during the shooting that sort of mission of Alexander's was ever present. Just because he was such sort of, I guess, an encyclopedia of knowledge for it, he was keeping you honest, I guess, was part of what you said.
Yeah, I think that it was really just that, like, he demanded perfection of the film and of himself. But I think that, like, as far as Viking nerd, like, competition, like, I win that contest.
You win the contest.
But
I like that.
But yeah, I mean, we were so lucky because we were bringing on the finest, like, historians and archaeologists, like, in the field of Viking studies to help tell the story.
I do love that. Did y'all ever have like a Viking trivia contest on set? Please tell me y'all did that. That would have been fun.
No.
Come on.
But maybe you can host one and then.
That we can get it.
Yeah.
They're having a moment. One of the things I feel, the reason why Viking culture is having a moment and why so many stories, I think, more on the small screen, but obviously this is taking it to another level on the big screen, is people want to get immersed within the culture. And there's something about how the culture invites you to sort of become an avatar within it. And this film very much feels like that, just with the journeys and the shots. So I want to talk to you about your shot selection because I do feel within every choice where there's such a long sequence put together, there's a clear cinematic reasoning behind it. But I also feel like those were such deliberate choices. What was the sort of impetus to it? Was each one just, that's where the camera wanted you to be? Or did you want this to have more of a longing shot approach?
I think, in some ways this is just like the next step after The Witch in the Lighthouse, and with what me and my DP, Jaron Blaschke, were kind of trying to do, and because this is endeavors to be a more entertaining movie and a better paced movie and an action movie, the camera's always moving. I think part of it is a reaction to the fact that action movies like this often are almost always shot multiple camera, and when Kurosawa shot his historical epics multiple camera, it was done with a lot of craft and specificity, and a lot of times now it's done without a lot of craft and specificity, and it's not like there hasn't been any single camera long take action movies in the past 10 years, but it's only like once every couple of years that there's a 1917 or a Revenant or whatever that tries to do this, because it is not easy to do. It takes a lot of discipline, but it focuses everybody. And one of the things that's great about it is that, like, the entire crew, every crew member, every actor, like, you really feel like you are just part of this beast. You're a limb, and so so that's fun in the making of it. But what it hopefully does for an audience is that, like, you're more immersed in the world when you're experiencing things live time. The battle sequence is not, quote, it is a lie because, like, no one's dying, but you're seeing each beat play out in live time, and I think that like, can be, or endeavors to be, better, more immersive storytelling for something like this.
It definitely, the immersive part of it is it goes without saying. The other thing I think that aids in it, and it's the thing that I remarked when I sat back here tonight, is the sound of it. Just how, I would say, visceral the hits feel, and just how gory the moments are. And I know that is a dance with the sound mixing, so I'll give you this opportunity to brag on those guys, because I know that they had to almost invent certain sounds for this kind of cinema.
Yeah, and especially, if you have a shot where you're looking at one central thing, but then there's certain things going on the sides. Like sometimes you need to hear those things in order to see them. So it was a tricky mix, and it took a lot of work, and and the sound team was amazing. But the other thing that we were really trying to do, particularly like in the raid and post raid, is the voice performers who do crowd stuff have a lot of technique, and they're like, and they just do it, and we would have to say like okay, like we gotta feel this pain, like you have to, you can't just show up today and scream, like you have to like get into the mindset of like your husband's just been killed in front of your eyes, and act, and that, and so another way in which we were trying to be demanding to, because the thing is, it's a difficult line to walk where like this is a big action set piece tentpole movie, and it's based on Icelandic sagas that read sometimes like 80s action movies, and so the violence needs to be thrilling and entertaining at points, but also like I'm not trying to glorify violence, and I don't condone violence. So sometimes that brutality, that extra brutality, it's not spectacle. It's like meant to be horrific and like repellent,
I think that's the main scene of the film that I found to be so interesting, and you see it in the final moments after he's killed his mother and half brother, and he realizes the monster in this moment that he's basically become in the quest of his vengeance. And Fjolnir comes in there and he just stares at him and he just looks. That look is so Shakespearean, and setting up that scene. I can see how some people don't see what it really does for both of those characters, but in so many ways with the Fjolnir character in particular, it just set up that last battle so incredibly. Talk about when you made that decision in the scripting, and because I think if you start with the naked sword fight, the question is
how do you get there?
How do you get there? Yeah.
Well, thanks for saying so. That's really nice. I think one of the things that I just loved about the sagas is, even though they're thinking and behaving in ways that is not modern, there's a modernity in the writing, in that these people are not black and white, and many of the saga heroes who their sagas are named after them are outlaws and or like psychopaths, and do bad things and are conflicted, and the villain might be a loving husband and like a good father, and that was really interesting to me, especially because in a film of this size, like generally like Commodus or the King of England and Braveheart, I mean those guys are just bastards, but Fjolnir is complicated, and even as merciless as he is to kill his brother, you can see he has doubt in that scene, which I like in Clancy's performance.
And if you're gonna get Nicole Kidman to give us a little mini Lady Macbeth, that's not a bad thing. Let's be honest.
No, and obviously, that's like maybe the scene that I'm the most proud of.
Yeah, I was going to use that to tee up. We haven't even talked about it yet, which is just incredible that they have so much to talk about, because this cast alone is a movie for most people. Like, they don't need anything else. Just with this cast and what they're able to do, it's a gift. But assembling what you did with folks from previous work to now, what was that sort of process like? Was everybody in mind immediately for the role? Because I know, especially with bringing like Anya back, that I obviously think was very specific. You knew that you wanted her for something.
Yeah, I mean the roles, Anya and Willem's roles were written for them. No one else can play a court jester / shaman aside from Defoe, and thankfully for Anya, while the Viking age was not a great age to be a woman, it was a better age Nicole thankfully said yes, like within 90 seconds of talking to her. She was a fan of The Lighthouse, and she said this script had teeth. And she's also, she has a good relationship with Alex. Ethan, I had seen him do a lot of stage work in Shakespeare, and we were really excited when we first talked that we were like, look, we both know that this is in your wheelhouse, but audiences are going to be surprised that you are going to be like an awesome Viking king from the moment we first lay eyes on you, and then of course I'm supremely lucky that Björk was in the movie, but that again, that comes down to kind of relationships too, because Robin Carolyn, one of the composers, he worked with Björk, so he introduced me and my wife to Björk. She introduced me to Schoen, the co-writer. They had known each other since they were teenagers. It was a familial atmosphere, so Björk was down.
I really do love the fact that, because I do feel like there's just a very short list of if you want to just automatically make this be this is the Icelanders movie, they're gonna love it. Björk is obviously the one, and so and then just her playing the seer and behind all that makeup, the poster for her is simply incredible. It brings to the whole idea. It's this film is Shakespearean. It's also has a lot of religious imagery, and everything from the crone to the seer to the jesters to mothers, maidens, and witches. Again, I just have to think this is something that really intrigues you, and so I'm curious if there's any particular Icelandic tales that maybe didn't explicitly get put in this, but that you definitely would sort of want to point folks to from some of the imagery.
Yeah, I was talking about in the last Q&A I did today, Airbnb Saga, which is a good one to check out with a lot of rituals and magic, but that has ghost seals, which we didn't get an opportunity to have in the film.
Was that in the script at one point?
No. But yeah, the first version of the script that Shion finished would have been like a $250 million movie. There was so much stuff in it. Something that is in a lot of sagas is instead of cockfighting, horse fighting, which would have been very expensive.
And yeah, get up for those horses. That's
it would have been
CGI. But either way, they gotta get up there and stage out. Here we're already shooting horse fighting for your next film. No, we're not gonna do that. I do have to say too with the entire cast and what everybody did with it, I feel like whenever you sort of write something, whether you're doing it with the idea of somebody in mind or what the actor does with it, there's always a surprising moment where an actor takes something that you wrote into a different direction that you found, just again surprising and great. And I'm just curious if you could share one of those from this experience.
I think this movie, more than any of my other films, has been a bit of plan and execute. But I think in The Lighthouse, Robert Pattinson surprised me and surprised Defoe and surprised himself all the time. And a lot of times Rob did things, and they're in the finished film, they were very different from how I had imagined them. And it's amazing. Defoe did everything exactly how I imagined it. That doesn't make it any worse.
That's very true.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, very true. No, I love that. I want to check really quickly because I want to make sure, I didn't bring my clock up. I want to make sure we're good on time, whoever my time person is. I can't see them. Hopefully? Okay. Well, they'll tell me. I think we're still good on time, but again, I'm looking for my little light now. I did want to bring it to this one, with whatever you're thinking of doing next, because the one thing I will say with the Northman is, as I said, it's 3 for 3, ladies and gentlemen. Should see that certified fresh symbol pretty soon for this one as well. And from your first film to this one, I've just been such a fan of your work. Is there a specific thing, because when you look at the film, you can see some themes, whether it's religion, when you're looking for your next project and where you maybe want to tell stories less, is it just finding the right trip, or are there specific areas that you find to be essential to the type of cinema that you want to make? Because again, it's very rare that a director can have such a clear signature this early on, and it's kind of remarkable that it's such at a high level.
Well, thanks.
And impressively so thank you.
Very kind. The most important thing is that I need a title that starts with the. Look, I'm always, it's history, religion, mythology, folktales, fairy tales, the occult. I mean, that's what I'm into, and it's not likely to change anytime soon, so hopefully people don't get sick of it.
Well, I mean, look at this though. You went in a totally different direction with this by making it such. I said to someone when I first saw it, this is his most approachable, I would say, endeavor, and that's incredible. But I think I was like, if people are going to look for his other work, I just want to tell them it gets weird. So this is the first film that they see. But I would say, like, let me see that version of musical. Let me see that version of a family drama. Like there's a lot of that in this one too. So yeah, what would be sort of like the strange combination to add to those themes, like you did with this one with Big Action?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing maybe minorly surprising that I would be interested in doing is science fiction, which is not likely to be next, but.
Why'd you just disappoint everyone in this room?
Well,
I'm just kidding, no, that's great. It's not likely to be next, so does that mean you know exactly what's next?
I will be as uncooperative and elusive as possible, respectfully.
Oh, he definitely is. All right, well, I want to thank you so much for this. This was a great chat. I want to thank all of you for watching, and I want to thank everyone.